Oh, it's that you look like you should be prospecting for gold or something. Right? Very hard message. And then actually you look like a philosopher, right? Really.
Yeah, like a Marxist.
Carl, Carlo. Let me see. This week's topic, right, is privacy. What week's theme is privacy. So welcome, everyone. I hope everyone's feeling okay. Oh, well, stunned silence, right? Yay! No, so, are we all happy, right? Okay, we're all happy. Right? I will survive it. Yeah, we're taking a stoic approach to life. What I did actually have as, I guess, a conversation starter was I think I told everyone to look at this. I'll share it. Yeah. Um, so Sky News on the 13th of September, earlier this week, had a thing about privacy, and you can actually listen to the person's comments about privacy, or you can just read the article. And as you can see there, it says it's a 14-minute listen. I don't know if it's a 14-minute listen because it's not that long a piece. Just trying to see how long it is. Wait a minute, how long is it?
Is that it?
That's it.
Yep, 14
How can that be 14 minutes? It's like, oh, okay. It's like maybe a lot of it is padded out with ums and ahs, or maybe it's just he has like video clips, etc. But apparently it's a psychiatrist. So psychiatrist Dr. Tanvir Ahmed says the notion of privacy has changed in Australia, as in the name of security, increasingly extreme forms of monitoring are being allowed. Drones now patrol the city in Melbourne, patrolling social distancing protocols, Mr. Ahmed said. The COVID Safe app monitors our movements, our internet behaviour already, produces gigabytes of data for commercial use from the likes of our Silicon Valley overlords, Google, Facebook, Amazon, etc. And let me just keep reading. Mr. Ahmed said Sydney has about 60,000 surveillance cameras and was only a step away from incorporating facial recognition systems. Now, Mr. Ahmed quotes 60,000 surveillance cameras, and if you look, I think it's in either the learning materials section or the learning activities section. There's a couple of videos relating to the use of intelligent surveillance cameras in China, and how easy it is for those cameras, because they're connected to AI systems, to actually pick people up. And I think there's a journo that kind of goes through Beijing Airport or something, and kind of wondering how fast it will be before the cameras flag him. And I think it's a couple of seconds, and he's already surrounded by 5 security guards or police officers. And basically, the people that are responsible for this, because they talk with a company that's responsible for managing the software, sophisticated surveillance throughout China, and the people kind of say, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, you shouldn't actually be afraid. And I think some people might think, well, even though I'm not doing something wrong, I don't like actually being watched all the time by people. It's kind of creepy. And I think that's the kind of question, I think, nowadays. Or the question that I kind of pondered was something like, is privacy still does privacy matter in the digital age? I think was our discussion topic, and I think let's. Well, I don't know, Ilya. What do you think of that question? Does privacy matter in the digital age?
Well, it comes back to remember the old quote saying, "If you've got nothing to hide, why care?" Right? But then the controversy erupted from there, saying, like that guy that was showing, if you believe in that you don't have anything to hide, then give me all of your passwords to all of your accounts on your computer.
Oh yeah, that's the TED talk, which I think is also kind of the least that you need to do this week. If you look in learning activities, there's a really good TED talk by Glenn Greenwald, who was the journalist that actually was the go-between between Edward Snowden, and I think he kind of briefly mentions that there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can actually chase up about Edward Snowden. He's the American person who worked for the National Security Agency, and kind of illegally shared a lot of stuff with the NSA, which he shouldn't have, to kind of tell the people in the United States and the rest of the world that the NSA was spying even on innocent people. And now he's kind of somewhere in Russia, I think, but occasionally he pops up because they say, oh, well, Ed Snowden is doing a talk for, whatever, etc. So we've got him via, the camera, etc., which is kind of risky for him, I think, because I think a lot of people in the US would like to see him behind bars, etc. But I think what Ed Snowden did, was to try and actually tell people in the world, hey, look, your privacy is being, done over by the NSA, and and this is not a good thing, So what Ed Snowden did was almost classic, utilitarianism, kind of like doing something. He broke the law, basically, in order to do something which he thought would maximise the greater good for the greater number, and then in exchange, I think he kind of lost his freedom, So in other words, he's always going to be on the run. I don't know how free he is in Russia. It reminds me, who's that other guy? Julian Assange?
Assange, yeah. He got the pardon or reprieve or whatever it was from Trump, so he can finally go back to the States.
Oh, so what? Julian Assange is free? Did he get a pardon?
He's basically a free man. He's no longer being haunted or hunted by the left wing.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah. I mean,
but going back to this surveillance camera, questions pop into mind saying how secure are those surveillance cameras? And because like here at the moment, you can actually go onto the internet and actually find websites which have I wouldn't say hacked, but people have got their own cameras at home and they haven't set them up correctly. So they have actually, like they're fairly open. Yeah. So you can browse through people's, like their home and what they're doing and so forth. Just not on the internet. But in this respect, where they've got the surveillance cameras, whether you can do that, that's one, right? But the main one is who is keeping the data and what are they doing with the data?
But wait, look, see, I don't think Julian Assange has been pardoned. See, US law says Julian Assange faces decades in prison if convicted.
Yeah, but my understanding was that Trump said that he can come back. He's no longer. Yeah.
Right.
Maybe it was false. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, like, because I did a search on Julian Assange to see what the latest. The latest on Julian Assange is Assange defense questions why Obama didn't seek to prosecute him straight away. It's more like, why did they take this long, before they started asking for extradition? And the Australian newspaper 5 hours ago and they've got a headline: Julian Assange, like Jeffrey Epstein, may not be safe in prison. You know, Epstein, the billionaire that nasty things with underage people, and then he was found dead in his cell, right? And they probably think the same thing might happen with Assange, because Assange probably knows a lot, and even more than what WikiLeaks actually released. And then they're probably afraid that somebody's going to do something to him because everybody's too Jack's Bond like.
In jail, probably wouldn't be the prisoners, obviously. It'd be someone who paid a prisoner to do something.
Yeah. But what are your thoughts about Julian Assange and WikiLeaks? I mean, do you think that he was okay in doing what he did, releasing information, etc.?
Personally, it keeps people, holds them to account. Yeah. I don't know whether you can argue what they're saying, like, what was it, national security and all that sort of rubbish, but he's actually fine. It's the same, for me, it's the same as, how you have the three categories of hackers. You've got the black hat, grey hat, white hat, right?
Yeah.
And black hat obviously is there just to destroy things, do harm.
Yeah.
Grey, they try to break into systems and but they actually notify the people about it, about the lack of security. And then you have the white hat, which are working for people to prevent the grey hat and the black hat coming in. That's my understanding. So why can't we just label Assange as either a grey hat or a white hat hacker? Right? He's actually showing that you've got flaws in your system. Look at the information that's been leaked out. And God knows what other nations are getting, which they don't even know that it is getting passed around. So, in a way, he should be paid millions of dollars for finding all these the holes in their system.
True, yeah. And the fact is that but I don't think Assange is actually responsible for everything that WikiLeaks did. I mean, like a lot of the stuff that was actually published on WikiLeaks was from other people, other sources. You know what I mean? Like Assange basically just co-created that platform. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't even think he actually created WikiLeaks himself. There's probably other people. Right? We're kind of wondering, like, why is all the blame being lumped on Julian Assange? You know? Yeah. But the thing is, like, Assange is actually a Melbourne person, I think. I think originally he started in IT at Melbourne. It may have even been RMIT, I'm not sure exactly, And apparently early in the days of computing, right, I guess probably you said white hat hackers or grey hat hackers, right? Those people hung out in cafes in Northcote. So Northcote was like the cool place, and it kind of still is a cool place in Melbourne, right? And they would hang out there and maybe share, war stories, code, etc., and stuff like that. And I think that was probably the place where, WikiLeaks may have even been born. It was kind of more like Assange went off to bigger and better places, and then, and then all this happened, And the thing is, he's become a kind of minor celebrity or, notorious because of this, I mean, I don't know if he would actually rather have been just an anonymous white hat hacker all his life rather than being what he is now, because they've actually made a movie about it. I think I've got the link. I know I didn't put the link up on Canvas because I don't want to overload students or too much to watch, or it may be actually later in the semester when we actually have the political issues section in the course, right, in week 12. Right? And I might plug it there because Benedict Cumberbatch, who's James Bond, he's Sherlock Holmes, right? The kind of revamped Sherlock Holmes. and Benedict Cumberbatch played Julian Assange, right? And I think was kind of making fun of his poor Australian accent, because Assange is an Aussie, and it's kind of difficult to do a good Australian accent. And even though Cumberbatch is a fine actor, it's kind of really hard to do a natural Aussie accent without sounding like you're, caricaturing it. But that's it. I mean, like that was that. So they had a kind of film about Assange, right? And then they also had it's like a major Hollywood film, that kind of thing. And then also, I think they've had a TV miniseries about Assange, and they had like a feature-length documentary about Assange, etc. So in a sense, it's kind of what, I mean. But what's
did he get any? Did he get any royalties? You think from all this sort of stuff?
Good question. It's like I hope that maybe those royalties went to paying his legal bills, because I'm sure that his legal bill must be astronomical, unless the law firms are doing it like pro bono. You know what I mean? Because if they do it for nothing, right, it's more like the publicity that they get. Like we represented Julian Assange, etc. Sometimes that's good publicity for a law firm, etc. Even though it's kind of time consuming, for kind of their normal bread and butter work. But I think the thing about Assange, right, is kind of allied to the experiences of Ed Snowden. So Ed Snowden kind of did what he did to kind of tell people in the US and around the world that, hey, your privacy is being hacked into, right? And Assange was kind of doing something similar, but like more all-encompassing. You know what I mean? It's more like WikiLeaks. It was almost like a whistleblowing site. Or does it still exist? Maybe we should have a look.
Actually,
Let's have a look. Let's have a look if WikiLeaks still exists. I mean, like, because I want to.
yes.
It's still there. Yeah, it's still there.
So,
It's still there.
I guarantee you, last update. Let's have a look. Last updated, 2019.
Yeah. And you can search for, how to search for privacy. Wait a minute. There's nothing about privacy. Bloody hell.
No, interesting.
No, interesting, yeah. But in terms of privacy, like in Australia, for example, each state has a privacy commissioner, and there's actually an office of the Australian Information Commission, and I'm trying to. Why is that? Oh, okay. Here, I'll share this. I'm just trying to. Let me see. Hey, how are you, Andrew?
I'm good, thank you, John. How are you?
G'day, Andrew.
Hi, yeah.
Good day, Leah. Was running
G'day.
back from groceries, so a bit late.
Oh, groceries. Yeah.
Fine day.
Comfort food.
Reading the
No, wait. Did you buy any comfort food, Andrew, in your groceries? I was listening to the news today, right? And they said that there's been a 15% increase in people buying comfort food, right? And they were trying to find out what food do people actually eat for comfort. And I think the statistics were they featured things like hot dogs and Kit Kats and mashed potatoes and butter. I think that was the top 3 comfort foods. Yeah. So Ilya, are any of those your comfort foods? Hot dogs, Kit Kats?
Yes, and I'm going to have hot dogs tonight.
Oh, so that was spot on.
For the greater good.
The thing is, right, the guy that was saying, oh, well, mashed potatoes with butter sounds almost healthy compared to hot dogs and Kit Kats. But I'm thinking that's generalizing, labeling hot dogs in a bad way. How do you know that they're not like vegan hot dogs? Have you heard vegan hot dogs?
I'm getting mine from Costco.
So in other words, they're actually good hot dogs, not kind of like just.
Literally bought over the counter.
You know what they call hot dogs. The Australian, one Australian slang term. I'll put it up. It's
Bunnings hot dog.
the slang word for hot dogs is mystery bags.
Mystery.
They call them mystery bags, right? Because you don't know what's in them really, right? Unless you kind of pay big bucks, right? So, oh yeah, I've had those snags over there. What are they? Don't ask, right? Because I think Jamie Oliver, he's the British chef, cook, or whatever, right? He had a whole program once on mystery bags, right? And he showed how they make kind of cheap sausages in the UK, which is kind of get any slop, put it into a mincer, right? And just mince it really fine. Nobody cares, right? So it's still a sausage, right? You know, but it could have 7 heads in it. Doesn't matter. It tastes good.
Soda.
The filler. That kind of thing, yeah. But yeah, okay. 40% meat. Okay, what's the other 60%? That's what I meant. You know, so,
I don't know. Probably like fat, perhaps.
Yeah, it'd just be junk. Yeah.
No, I should have said, by warning, for this session, warning. This session may contain nuts. So, just in case, right, I have to make a warning, you know. But that's my trigger warning for, for this morning's session. But anyway, the Office for the Australian Information Commission, right, is based in Canberra, right, and they're kind of responsible for, privacy issues, throughout the Commonwealth, right, at a national level. And each state has their privacy commission. But it was kind of interesting when they made the change in Canberra, right? So they took the word private out and they just said, oh, we're the, the Information Commission. And it almost reminded me of, George Orwell, the kind of British author with his book 1984, which I think the kind of dystopian future that he was portraying. Right? The people that were responsible for spying on people, they were part of the Ministry of Information, which is tricky as well. But every year, all of the states, privacy commissioners, right, and also at a federal level, right, they kind of sponsor something called privacy. Oh, you're telling me to F.org? Sorry, is that like F.off? Sorry.
I remember that one.
Oh, wait, you remember that? Hold it. I need to have a look.
Just go to. They've got an interesting
Article.
article.
Foundation. Oh, yes.
Have a look. The current one, researchers targeting AI by sex workers in Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I'll share that one. But anyway, we just missed Privacy Week. So this year, Privacy Awareness Week was 4th of May to the 10th of May, right? And I don't know what they do during Privacy Awareness Week during lockdown, right? But normally they would have, like, I don't know, festivals and, like rides in the parks. But no, they don't have. They actually have like just boring seminars and people hand out posters and stuff like that. Let's have a look at. I'll share that Electronic Frontiers Foundation because it looks interesting.
I thought you would have been aware of that one.
I'm aware because I think there was a guy who was actually a lyricist for a rock band called the Grateful Dead, and he actually co-founded the Electronic Frontier Foundation. And also another person that I know who's a science fiction author. Let me see, I shall bring him up.
How I came across the EFF was because I run my own server, my own mail service and so forth, instead of paying for SSL keys and so forth, I use like a free organisation called Let's Encrypt, and Let's Encrypt got attacked and so forth, and then these guys jumped in. Saying people should be free to create their own serialized license keys and so forth. Why do you have to pay an organisation hundreds of dollars a month to have your keys? So that's how I got onto these guys many years ago, and these guys seem to be fighting for freedom of speech all the time, like on so many different levels. It's unbelievable.
Do they have like local offices?
Like, how do they afford it? That's what I can't understand. To actually be able to, fight for everyone, and you can't do everything from donations. Like you even see on that page there, it's got donate, big red thing. But I can't see just donations providing enough money to, fight government organisations, basically nations in a way. Yeah.
So how do you protect? How do you protect?
Privacy? How does an organisation like that, even exist? How can they afford? Like even just the web page or the web service? How do you pay for all that sort of stuff? You can't get it in your own pocket.
This is how my connection, my understanding of the Electronic Frontier Foundation came from, because in the a recommended text for this course, Ethics for the Information Age, right? They have a section, I think, with a quote from this guy, John Perry Barlow, the Internet Pioneer, 1947. 2018. And if you scroll through here, he was actually like a lyricist and I think a manager of a rock band called The Grateful Dead, and in the 60s and 70s, I think, and because he was a child of the 60s and 70s, right? Then he was kind of born of that hippie age, kind of against totalitarianism and authoritarianism and freedom and make love and all that kind of stuff, right? And I think John Perry Barlow was one of the first people to kind of embrace the power of the internet, and I guess liberating people, and that's why he kind of, I guess, he was one of the kind of founding fathers of the Electronic Frontier Foundation. As I say, Barlow's lasting legacy is that he devoted his life to making the internet into a world that all may enter without privilege or prejudice accorded by race, economic power, military force, or station of birth, a world where anyone, anywhere may express his or her beliefs, no matter how singular, without fear of being coerced into silence and conformity. And apparently, if you go to the Electronic Frontier Foundation, I think they've got an archive of his writings, so tons of stuff, So you see the John Perry Barlow Library, because he actually wrote, and I think you can find it on YouTube, a declaration of the independence of cyberspace. And I think he actually performs this on the YouTube somewhere, which is kind of a long, 1996, we will create a civilization of the mind in cyberspace. May it be more humane and fair than the world your governments have made before it. So it's a very kind of utopian view of technology that was kind of John Perry Barlow's dream. And I think he wanted to kind of protect that with this foundation. But if I mean, there's totalitarianism which can exist through technology, but there's also totalitarianism that can exist, in real life. And we've talked about your experiences with real life totalitarianism in countries, for example, right? And I guess if you have totalitarian regimes, they would also probably not appreciate the concept of privacy. Am I correct? Yeah.
Well, you don't have any privacy, especially from my background, being
Yeah.
brought up in a communist country, Czechoslovakia and Bulgaria.
Yeah. Yeah.
You had no privacy. There was absolutely no privacy. Government could walk in and take everything that you've got at any stage. For instance, friends of ours had a house, and the government basically said, "Oh, hang on, son, you've got extra rooms in there." And if you had a house with 3 bedrooms, you had 3 families in there. So they would ship in 2 extra families to live in your house. And you don't own your house anymore because the government takes it off you and so forth. So, but you have absolutely no privacy. You basically I don't know. You could almost say like a prisoner.
Yeah.
You have no right.
Okay.
And God forbid you want to protest. You protest, boy, your family won't see you again. You're off to the uranium mines or something. There's no protesting. You can't say anything against it.
Oh, okay. So in other words, you didn't have what the Americans would call the right to be let alone, because I think if you look, I think it's in the learning materials section this week, there's a link to I think this article in Harvard Law Review from 1890 from Samuel Warren and Louis Brandeis, who are Supreme Court justices, I think, in the US, right? And as it says there, they drafted one of the most influential essays in the history of American law, and is widely regarded as the first publication in the United States to advocate a right to privacy, articulating that right primarily as a right to be let alone. Right to be let alone, which I think is a very simple way of putting what privacy actually is, right? So in other words, if you want to do whatever you like to do and it doesn't affect anybody else, and it's not breaking any laws, then nobody should actually be snooping on you because of that. So, and I think that's a perfectly good way to live, don't you?
Well, yeah, the harm principle. The harm principle. You can do anything as long as you're not harming anyone. It's fine.
Yeah. So that's an interesting observation that you have. That's John Stuart Mill's harm principle, right? So in other words, John Stuart Mill's harm principle is a way of justifying or explaining why kind of privacy is an important thing. Yeah.
But you don't have any privacy in a socialist communist sort of environment. You don't have any.
So do you think that what's happening now with social media, when people kind of connect to social media and they don't read the terms and conditions of use or the licensing agreements, right? And basically, whatever information they put of their lives onto a social media platform is no longer owned by them. Does that mean social media, by your definition, is almost like a socialist, communist form of totalitarianism in the sense that people are
actually, in a way, yes. Have a look at Zuckerberg's Facebook. They're filtering and they're basically censoring information on Facebook when they really have no right to do that. It should be an open forum. Yeah. And I can't remember what that in America, actually it's worldwide, I think, for internet control. What was it, C29 or C209, something like that? Was the not a law, but the rule was saying that if you are an owner of the server and people publishing on your server, that rule 209 or whatever it was it protected the people who owned the server because they were not considered publishers. They were just considered people who were passing information on, so that they couldn't be prosecuted. And what's happening is that if you look at Facebook, they're actually becoming a publisher, and they should be prosecuted because of the fact that they're not just passing on information; they're censoring. So they're basically editing. And if you're editing content, it means that you're a publisher. So they're walking a very fine line where they could soon see millions of dollars of legal action against them. Not only from people who use Facebook for business and so forth, but the government as well. And I think Trump has already sort of pulled it out as the Trump card, saying if you're censoring, that means you're becoming a publisher, which means you may face legal action.
So that's an interesting point that you make, or observation, that the act of censorship means that you're actually also publishing. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, because you're an editor. You become an editor. If you're an editor, that means you are publishing not the actual content, you're filtering content and then editing, which means that you're putting out information that you want to see, not what was originally posted.
Well, I mean, the thing is,
It's in real trouble. Same as Twitter. Twitter is in real trouble because they're censoring and blocking people's accounts and so forth, which is putting them in the realm of being content providers where they're like editors, right? Not editors, but they're publishers, which means they're in real trouble. They have to watch their staff because they've got staff who are either leaning left or right and all this sort of stuff. And they put their own personal opinion into, forget the algorithms, they're talking about algorithms, but the algorithms are only one part of the filtering system. It's the person who is pushing the buttons to actually, to create the algorithm. And then there's also the manual override of the algorithms. So they're in real strife.
This is something from the past. I used to have this in a slide there. Somebody in 2018 found a quote from Mark Zuckerberg where he called people dumb because they trusted him with his data, with their data. It's just kind of like here he is, Mark Zuckerberg, etc. That kind of thing.
You got very long hair there.
But it's like it's like they've actually found this conversation in 2018 in Esquire, as reported by Business Insider. Conversation, according to SAI sources, went as follows: Zook. Yes, so if you ever need info about anyone at Harvard, just ask. I have over 4,000 emails, pictures, addresses, SNS. Redact your friend's name. What? How did you manage that one? People just submitted it. Don't know why. They trust me. And then Zuckerberg says, whatever, dumb, etc. That kind of. And that was the 19-year-old Mark Zuckerberg, a communication that he made in the comfort of his own dorm at the time that Facebook started. So if you actually want to see the origins of Facebook, at least at a fictional level, I think I've got a link to the movie Social Network. I think in the week 8 learning materials folder, which is actually kind of it starts off, I think, with I think Jesse Eisenberg plays Mark Zuckerberg quite well, because Jesse Eisenberg has that kind of personality. And I think it starts off with Zuckerberg, he has a relationship with a woman and it breaks up, and then he goes back to his kind of plots some kind of revenge and comes up with something, and then eventually that thing morphs into Facebook, etc.
But on that same aspect where he's getting data from people because they just submitted it, it's going back to the original argument he put before was a lot of people install things, like the on the Android or the iApps, right? Go to the Play stores and so forth, and you install, and it hits you with this. We want to access your contacts, your URL history, the whole bloody lot, right? And how many people have you actually heard that actually read all that? And they don't. They just accept everything, and then complain about it afterwards, right? Like those guys are actually, putting out legitimately saying, I will access all of your content, right? And people install these apps like willy-nilly and just say, yeah, I accept. And then someone says, oh, my information was, sent out to someone, or I keep getting spammed, and I get all these, telephone calls about buying renewables, or, do you want to buy solar panels and all this sort of thing. Well, obviously, because you've accepted this guy's application, and he's just sent on your information because you accepted it, right? But I really don't see why people don't check, scrutinise a bit more about what, like if you said install this app, first thing is a logical mind would say, well, has it got virus in it? Is it a scam? And so forth. But past that, they don't even think about private information, all my contact details, or accessing my devices. They don't care.
But it's convenient, maybe it's convenient. What if your local council, right?
Yeah.
Or at Moonbase Alpha said,
my socialist council.
Yes. Yeah, the Socialist Council said, for example, what we'll do is, we'll have this new policy, right? You give us this information, this data, right? And in exchange, we'll mow all your lawn for free, once a week, that kind of thing. You know what I mean? If it's something kind of abstract in that sense, because in a sense, before you had Facebook, before you had Twitter, before you had your social media platform, nobody knew about social media, right? And the social media came around. And then, we're discovering that, we're addicted to it, or you find it useful for some purpose. But in the process, right, social media survives because they use our data to make money from it, etc. That kind of thing. So, yeah.
It's a good point. Read Andrews.
Thank you.
It's a good point, Andrew.
What do you think that you sign in sentence?
Yeah.
Oh, in this. Okay, so maybe the thing is, right, if you do join a social media platform like Facebook, for example, and then maybe Facebook themselves or Twitter has to be aware that they're not just social media, but they're also, in a sense, a publishing organization or broadcasting organization, that kind of thing, right? Maybe you have to actually, when you actually get new members into social media platforms, ask them what their political leanings are. What do you think, Bill? If they actually asked you when you join Twitter or something, are you Republican, Labour, etc.
There again, it's filtering. You're filtering. You shouldn't filter at all. You should just be, for my purpose, internet should be fully open, and you can do anything you like. If you don't like it, don't look at it. Right? Don't go there. Or it's the same as if I was out here and I was I wanted to, let's say, set up a shop to sell meat hamburgers, some sort of product. It's all meat, right? All of my neighbours were all vegans. Right? Well, I'm not going to survive. People aren't going to come in and actually purchase my product, so I have to change my product. Same with internet. If I'm going to be on the internet and I'm a complete, arsehole, so to speak, right? I'm not going to get the feedback. So I will change because the community will actually not support my views, right? So you see what I'm saying? You should be free to say what you want and then actually discuss these things rather than someone telling you, oh no, sorry, you can't say that. It's silly. Like in business, you would not survive if you didn't do that. If you just followed everybody willy-nilly, your business would be shut down in 6 months.
But the but the thing is, the dream, I mean, the science fiction dream of, say, online news was always that, a person would log on, say, an online news platform, like a digital newspaper, right? And then the digital newspaper would sense by what you read, what you like, and then they would just tailor the news that's provided to you to your likes, you know what I mean? So, in a sense, that's kind of happening with how we use a lot of platforms, like YouTube, for example, right? So if and the thing is, like, if you watch YouTube videos, right, and then the algorithm notes kind of what your tastes are, right, and then in that right hand column, right, it would say, a YouTube recommend this, right, and maybe like 8 times out of 10 or 9 times out of 10, it's spot on. It's something that you kind of like,
I would say the business model has to change for the company like Facebook and so forth to pay me for my activity, rather than them just using my activity. Saying, "Oh yes, you want to buy a hamburger." We know that from your demographic, but if I accept, I should actually get paid for giving them that advice. So it shouldn't be just one way, because all they're doing is just sucking everyone dry for their information and then passing it on and making money out of it. Like, we as users should actually get paid, not Facebook directly.
Well, actually, that's an interesting point, because if you remember, I think in a few weeks to come, I got the literature site, I think a video from Jerome Lanier.
Oh, yes, you're right.
Yeah, and Jerome Lanier is like one of the founding fathers of virtual reality, but he's written a book recently, right? He basically says that everything should be monetized on the internet. So if you, as a user, actually provide any kind of content, so like if you're on Facebook, right, and the fact that you're on Facebook making content and other people read it, you're giving them your labor, they're making money from it, so they should also be paying you something,
Yeah.
And in effect, it's almost like, how I think at one point Zuckerberg, when people were trashing Facebook and saying, well, maybe we should have 2-tiered on that Facebook, where, there's a free version and one you have to pay for example. But if you look at Lanier's model, if you have like a sophisticated system that kind of can monetize everything online, then the system would kind of know by how much you post, how much your membership level should be, what I mean? So it's almost like the harder that you work on Facebook or Twitter in terms of posting content, right, then your privileges will increase,
I'll throw in a little spanner. At the moment, you see Facebook, Twitter, and all those sites, they're actually filtering and, so they're actually censoring what you can do on the internet. If I paid, like if I was paying money per month, would I be happy, or would you be actually happy for them to censor what you're actually saying if you're subscribing to a monthly charge?
Well, but that's my point before of why don't they ask for more questions about people's background when you're actually joining a social media platform. So they do. Maybe they should ask you questions about your political leanings, right? Because if you're conservative or right wing or left wing or whatever, that kind of thing, then maybe you have a certain kind of mindset, So that way, the platform knows in advance what you would like or what you might be posting. Like a right wing person is not going to be, making posts praising Karl Marx or things like that, But then the thing is, right, if people know what your background is, what your likes and dislikes are, they can show you options so that you have the choice of being able to change yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it almost sounds that they're trying to change me.
Okay, but going back to my YouTube example, when I notice that YouTube is recommending things to me, how do I know that the algorithm isn't just trying to retrain me? You know what I mean? How do I know that I'm making the choice of selecting a recommendation? You know what I mean? It's almost like operant conditioning. If a bell is rung and then I start to salivate because I think that there will be food, you know.
Yeah.
It's more like, you know, and it goes, and this goes to a very kind of deep level, you know, what actually motivates people to do things based on what their interest is. So how do people develop interest? You know, like if you're a completely blank slate and you have no knowledge about everything, you know, what kind of develops your interest? Onto curiosity, etc., that kind of thing, I guess, you know. But in a sense, you know, the YouTube, you know, algorithm offers recommendations is kind of fair because it just doesn't display one recommendation. It would show 3 or 4 recommendations as well as a range of other things, you know, like what came new. You know, so I'm not kind of saying that there's anything wrong about that. It's kind of clever, I think, you know, as it should be. I think. Yeah. But really, I think
Who is developing the algorithm and who is actually saying what you can and can't say?
well, the scary thing is, right, if it's a machine learning algorithm, right, you know, and everything's machine learning now, as we kind of talked about last week, right, the article that I posted from The Guardian, right, is that oftentimes, you know, the sophisticated machine learning algorithms and social media platforms, Google, etc., that kind of, that no one person would know how it actually operates because it's a learning algorithm. It actually kind of learns and changes how it functions subtly, you know what I mean? So then people kind of discover things about the algorithm itself. Like somebody posted something on the Essex Club earlier this week. I think it was when they were talking about machine learning algorithms, and they kind of posted an article from about a year or 2 ago when Facebook was experimenting with some kind of machine learning algorithm, and they had to actually cancel the project because the algorithm had developed its own language. And they were afraid of that kind of, you know, Terminator 2 scenario. Oh, the algorithm started to develop its own language because it's going to actually communicate with other subroutines and kind of plot against us, you know. But I'm not 100% sure about that whole you know, situation of the algorithm developing, you know, a language and then cancelling it for that reason. I think it may have been just something innocent, you know, like it wasn't doing what it was supposed to do, right? So that's why we terminated the project. Right? It's not because, you know, they saw that the algorithm was actually developing self-awareness. This article from The Conversation, which I've got up here, right? How much is your data worth to tech companies? Lawmakers want to tell you, but it's not that easy to calculate. That's from 2019. Right? It had an interesting estimate in here. This article talks about there's excessive ethics and political implications, etc. Oh yeah, there it is. I don't know if you can see that. It says here, however, calculating the value of user data isn't that simple. Estimates on what user data is worth vary widely. They include evaluations of less than $1 for an average person's data to a slightly more generous $100 US for a Facebook user. Right? So somebody actually did an estimate on digital data per person and came up with a value of less than $1. Interesting.
What I'm interested in, it says one user sold his data for basically 3,000.
I need to look at it. I need to look at it. That's a good one.
What data? What data?
How much is your personal data worth?
And how did he know who to sell it to?
Oh yeah, so that's the guy, Sean Buckles, a Dutch student who sold his own personal data for £288. You know?
Yeah.
All of his data? That's all it was worth?
It was 2,000, wasn't it? 2,700.
It was. But how come The Guardian quotes it as £288?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Fake news. See, Phil?
You see what I mean? So in other words, the conversation, which is supposed to be, you know, like a rigorous editorial process, actually has an error in it there. Or maybe The Guardian has an error.
Yeah.
Interesting, right?
Most likely say Guardian, but I don't trust that.
Wait a minute, so you don't like The Guardian. Why don't you like The Guardian, Bill?
Very, very,
Left wing?
yeah, oh, big time, yeah.
But mind you, it does have interesting articles, right? Doesn't it?
Oh yeah, it does. It does because they're a really good point.
Yeah, but to me, I think the Guardian is almost like porn for right-wing people. You know what I mean? Because it's not like right-wing people would say, I can't look at it, but I have to. That kind of thing. So, but the thing is, right? I mean, like, just think about it. Right? I don't know what's the right figure. What's £288 now? Nothing, because I think the British pound is worth nothing in terms of because that's 24% when this article is written. So, but still, that's a small amount of money, don't you think? If it's all of the person's personal data,
But I'd still like to know what data did he sell? How did he know to sell that data? And who did he actually sell it to? How did he know who to sell it to? Like, are there people there who have some advert somewhere saying, look, I'll pay you for your data?
Well, it was Kickstarter, wasn't it? It was Kickstarter. So let's have a look at, there must be Kickstarter page.
What they want that data for. Yeah.
I'm trying to see. Oh, he signed his. Okay. Dutch Sean Buckles has tackled the situation head on with his decision to sell his data sold at auction. He received £288 for a website, the Next Web. He says that the website will use his data to highlight privacy issues at their next conference. So he sold his data sold.
Data sold, I like that.
Whatever that is, right? I mean, like, data. Oh, hold it. So I accept. Once again, see, the reason why all this is happening is privacy issues.
Read it, you just accept it.
Okay, you see, it's silly me, right? You know the reason why all those things pop up is because of the Privacy Act in Europe, right? It's so strict. So every website that you go to, if it's anything kind of vaguely commercial, has those pop-ups, right? That you have to kind of say, I accept, without reading everything, right? Anyway, data sold Sean Buckles sells for £288. So now we've corroborated. Otherwise, it's fake news being spread from the Wired to Guardian, and then Guardian publishes that, and the conversation inflates it with a swelling mistake. £288, right? Okay, so, actually, it's €350 at the time, 2014. All of his personal data. So he put all of his personal data up for sale, including his personal records, location records, medical records, train travel patterns, personal calendar, email, social media chat, consumer preferences, browse history, and his thoughts. His thoughts! That's interesting. So how much are your thoughts worth, mate?
Yeah. Like thoughts, does that mean that his brain is legally owned by someone using those thoughts until you die?
God, thoughts. I can't.
I have a feeling this guy is going to really regret doing that.
Okay, maybe we need to find out, and then when somebody has some spare time, we can search for this Sean Buckles guy. What's he doing now? Did he take that money and invest in something and kind of?
It would be interesting to see.
Well, I mean, the thing is, what I would normally joke about, right, in class, right, is I would ask the question, right, if somebody came up to you and said, what's your name, right, could you actually say something like, I'll tell you what my name is if you give me $5, that kind of thing, Yeah. I mean, because it's not like, okay, I'm going to go up to people and I'll say, I will tell you my name if you pay me $5. You know what I mean? Because nobody would do that. Like if you're begging for money, for example, people would normally come up to you and they would say, well, I need money for accommodation, you have $2, etc., that kind of thing, right? I mean, they wouldn't say, well, I'll tell you my name if you give me $2, etc., that kind of thing. I don't know if that would actually work.
I usually get you got $2 for a smoke, mate?
But like when I was in New York on Broadway, right, they had like honest beggars that had signs up saying need money for drugs or something like that. Need money for booze. At least you know that you're actually investing the money in, for example. Right? But you know, like if people start selling their data that way, that's really
So
interesting.
I have a question. If people start selling their data,
Yeah.
people in the different hierarchy or the structure within the community,
Yeah.
do they actually charge at a different rate? So, for instance, if I went to Donald Trump and I said, I want your data, would
Yeah.
he charge $1 billion? And if I went to the homeless guy on the street, he would say, give me $2, right?
Yeah, well, less than $1, as we know. You know, like the average estimate for personal data is less than $1. Yeah.
So depending on your status within the community, your experience level, your skill level, what your life experiences have been, what you've achieved in life, all that, right? Then you pay accordingly.
But I have read opinion pieces where people have kind of criticised this kind of move to data analytics, big data.
Leading on to it.
Yeah, because big data means that obviously whoever collects big data and uses it for business purposes, right, is probably often making decisions based on skewed information because some of that data, or most of that data, might come from people who are kind of high positions and high salaries, etc. That kind of thing, right? And it would leave off the bat people that aren't connected. So the homeless people or people that poverty, borderline poverty, etc. That kind of thing. So you would have them in this age decisions being made, government policies even, right, based on information that's derived that doesn't take a kind of democratic viewpoint of citizens, etc. That kind of thing. Yeah, which is kind of a bad thing, and I think that's one of the downsides about the push for privacy as well. If you read, Quinn's book and Quinn Ethics and Information Age, recommended text, which you can actually find via the link to the MIT library, and there's now actually 2 chapters on privacy because it's Bloatville, in terms of privacy. It used to be in early editions just 1 chapter, right, and then it's growing. So pretty soon Quinn may have to have another volume just devoted to privacy, right?
Yeah.
But I think what Quinn tries to argue is the negative aspects of privacy. People criticise it, right? If you have an obsession with privacy, it means that there are some people who kind of might need help, who would be excluded from getting help because privacy would be like a shield that kind of hides them, it makes them invisible. Which would be homeless people, people that kind of low socioeconomic class, etc. That may even need help because they could be in abusive relationships and stuff like that. And, if you were living in a society where you were constantly being spied upon, right, then maybe one of the benefits would be that society would also pick up on aberrant behaviour and try to get rid of it. I don't know, it'd be interesting to find statistics, right? If you were in a communist country back in the days of old, right, where you had no privacy, what were the levels of family violence like?
Huge.
Huge, yeah.
Oh, big time, yeah.
Big time.
God, yeah. Even when I was there, it's like it's massive. The reason is because the whole country, everyone's in like in a stressful situation.
Okay, yeah.
Because every day you basically, your day is to get up. If you have to go to work, okay, you'll go to work, but you'll go late because no one really cares if you turn up to work or not. And usually what you'll find is because in a socialist or communist country there is no unemployment, right? Because for each position within the company there will be like 4 or 5 people assigned to the same position. If you're not working in it, right? But the important one there is you get up and your whole aim for the day is to go and search for food. you're basically on guard all the time. You always have your bag with you and stuff. And as soon as you see a queue, you just queue up. You go into the queue. So there'll be like 200 people in a queue. You just queue. And then when you get in the queue, then you say, what are we queuing for? You know what? And the word will sort of pass around saying, oh, they got bread, you know, or they've got meat, or they've got beer. Right? So you queue to get that, you know, that bit of resource, and then you go back home for the day. But it's like, it's pure like stress all the time. And then when they get home, you know, it's just fighting bigger and all that because you've got no cash, you've got no food. If you missed out on a queue because you sort of like you're in the queue and you get there and they said, oh, we'll run out, right? You go back home, the wife wants to yell at you, you know, how am I going to feed the kid? It's just, it's a nightmare.
Sounds terrible.
I couldn't wish it on my worst enemy. You really just stay away from that rubbish.
Yeah. I mean, because most people might say, well, you know, if you have like a totalitarian regime, it's a surveillance society, so everybody's being watched, and then you would minimise crime. But from what you describe, it's more like the totalitarian regime defines crime in a strange way. You know, it's
give you an example. If you're lucky enough to get a car, because my uncle had a car, and it took him 15 years to get it. Right? So to get a car in a socialist communist country, you don't just go to the shop and talk to the sales guy. You basically have to order it, pay for it, and then you have to wait X amount of years for your car to come in. Right?
Wow.
And he spent 15 years, right, paid for a car. It was a Skoda or a Lada car.
Yeah.
When you actually get this car, you know, after 15 years, because of the socialist communist thing, you know, like there's no effort. Like everybody's gets to pay, or don't really care. So they don't actually tighten up everything in the car. So you have to basically, when you get the delivery of the car, before you drive it away, you have to go and actually tighten everything, all the bolts. Right? To make sure, because if you drive down the road, things will start falling off. Right?
Why would they be shipping a car with loose bolts?
There's no effort. You really couldn't care. And that's the socialist way of doing things, because there is no, you know, like, if you really perform, you're going to get extra. There's no point. Right?
I'm just kind of wondering what it was like.
Here's the thing about that, because people do have cars, the theft in that factory is just phenomenal. Like people walk gearboxes and all sorts of things. My uncle actually said he saw a few people with wheelbarrows and they'd have a full transmission, right? Stealing stuff, and then when you actually get your car home, right, you literally have to take all the bits. Like the most common one is the windscreen wipers. You have to take the windscreen wipers off. Anything that you can remove, right?
Yeah.
And the wheels, right? They're probably the first thing, but usually what my uncle would park the car, you get out the car, and he'd pull both of the windscreen wipers off. And I said, why are you doing that? He says, if I don't, they'll be gone in 2 minutes. So the theft is ripe everywhere, right? So because you can't afford to get things, you have to steal it.
This is what you describe, right, is a culture with an entirely weird form of ethics. You know what I mean? Because like what you're telling me, but
it turns into survival. It really does.
But it's kind of like it has a structure to it. It's not just kind of madness. You know, like when you said your uncle took the windscreen wipers off, but why? And then he described that. You know, so there's a reason for everything. You know. And even what you said, you know, going on with a knapsack and look at cubes, right, etc., that kind of thing. So it's more like you look for a cube because it must be queuing for something of worth, you know?
I'll tell you, you remember here when they introduced that, we will not use plastic bags?
Yeah.
Try to do that in a communist country, you will get shot, right? Because those plastic bags are the things you have to have with you just in case of a queue, right? so
okay.
you can actually put something up, and they live off plastic bags and all that. Right? You have to have one in the pocket all the time. Right?
Okay, but the thing is, this communist country, communist countries, were they actually concerned about sustainability issues? Like, did they have some kind of environmental policy, or was it nothing? You know?
I couldn't go into that depth because I was only small when I was
Oh,
there.
okay.
You could ask my wife. She was in Romania with Ceausescu.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
she copped the brunt of it a lot worse than I did.
Yeah.
She was even there when the students started to riot, and they actually the whole the rioting and the change of or the overthrow of all the communist crap actually happened in her university.
Yeah.
Where it instigated, where it started.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
And so you were watching the.
we will all be equal, and
Oh, okay. I should actually ask her one day what the quality of teaching was, at a university in a totalitarian regime. Because from what you describe, if people, when they manufacture cars, don't care about, tightening bolts, does that mean teachers don't care about how they teach as well?
how do you say, you have to be part of the party. So,
Yeah.
as a teacher, you do perform, otherwise you get kicked out of the party. So you have to perform.
Okay, so I'm putting up a paper here, which is actually from a journal called Television and New Media, and it's My TiVo Thinks I'm Gay, Algorithmic Culture, and it's discontent. And that line, My TiVo Thinks I'm Gay, actually comes from a sitcom called King of Queens, right? Because TiVo was a personal video recorder, PVR, right? But it kind of did more than just kind of do digital recordings, right? What people watch, right? It would actually learn from what people recorded and give recommendations, So in this particular episode of King of Queens, right, the person that is actually bought a TiVo, right, is actually angry because the character wasn't gay, right? But the TiVo was saying, you watch this program and you watch this program and you watch this program. Therefore, you should watch this program. It's obviously something about, that's related to gay culture, etc. It's kind of, irritated that person, that he was being stereotyped, right? And I think that's probably a danger, right? You have, algorithmic systems that are all over the place that are kind of, I guess they're spying on us in a sense, right? Because we're using systems, right? And the algorithms that control these systems, right, then kind of get an understanding of what they think we like, right? And then they can kind of, like YouTube recommends videos to me, right? And then they happen to recommend videos that I like, but what if, the videos kind of give an indication that, kind of gives a big picture view of who they think I am, and I'm not that person, That's the kind of dangerous, kind of stereotyping rather than kind of trying to understand who you really are. And, can people actually judge who a person is just on, their buying habits, or what they actually watch on television? I think people.
That's an interesting question. I'd love to see the algorithms that they've got. Like how do you? Because models are not the best thing in the world. How do you model anything on the planet if it's got so many variables, right? You just can't do it in a computer. And so how do you do it with a human being? I mean, every human being is really unique in a way, right? In some aspect. So how do you?
But don't you kind of do that? I mean, you kind of demonstrated that to me once, right? That you could kind of sense from people's demeanor, their behaviour, etc. How talented they were in certain areas. And that to me seems kind of like magic almost, or voodoo, etc. That kind of thing. And but do you think that's something that's uniquely human that can't be reproduced by a machine?
In a way, I would agree. It's because it's like how do you say, a random machine meets another random machine. Actually understands the randomness better than someone who's logical about it. if you get my drift.
Yeah.
Random meets random actually makes some kind of sense, but random meets logic doesn't make any sense.
Random meets logic.
Hard to explain. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And do you think that human beings are more random than logical?
I think so. I think even people who think that they're logical still hit the random part of their inner soul.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And they know how to address it. Like if you have the skills and the experience, you know how to address that randomness all the time. Because like even yourself, you would have experienced something new every day.
Oh yeah, surprise. You know, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I think that's an emotional thing. That's a feeling kind of thing. To me, or a sense of wonder. You know, wonder, surprise, that kind of thing. You know, and being open to that, because oftentimes, you know, people aren't open to something new. That sometimes people might be threatened by, oh, it's something new, I'm going to run away, hide, because it could be harmful, etc. But you know, often, you know, you could be surprised, which is a good thing. You know, that kind of sense of one. The thing about privacy that, you know, the person Glenn Greenwald talks about in his TED talk, which people should actually watch. It's a really good TED talk, right? He says that, you know, like you mentioned that earlier today, right? That he often asks people, you know, send me, you know, your credit card numbers, etc., that kind of thing, your passwords, etc., to this email address, right? And he checks it every day, and nobody's actually sent anything, right? Because I think most people would be paranoid, you know, and rightfully so, because in this age of, you know, hacking and computer security, people will say, you know, don't reuse your passwords, etc., blah blah blah, and so forth, right? So people are kind of ultra paranoid, right, about things, right? But even before you had you know, computers running everything, and if you were working in the corporate sector, remember, like, one of the big things about working in the corporate sector, and not, you know, for, you know, like the government or something, or public service, right, where everybody knows what your salary is, that when you're working for a private company, right, nobody knows what your salary is except, you know, your boss and you, right? And HR and stuff like that, you know, so you could be, and the thing is, right, the logic in that is normally like, you could be, you know, working next to somebody in a cubicle, right? If you're in IT land, right, and that person that's next to you can be earning like 3 times more than you do, right?
Exactly.
And the reason why they don't reveal salaries is to not have that kind of animosity. It's not like, well, you know, if you knew that, you know, your neighbour had, you know, earned 3 times more, you say, why are you, you know, earning so much? You don't seem to do anything more than I do, etc. That kind of thing. You know, it's not like
everyone has a different skill level, and so in the professional field, you actually get monetary depending on your skill level. Like for myself, I told you the story for myself when I started, and I basically got 33% increases, right? And big jumps. I was actually earning in my let's see, that in the third year, I was actually making a lot more than my managers. So my direct supervisors were nowhere near my pay level.
Well, so wait a minute. Let me get this straight. Your manager was earning less than you.
Yes. And it wasn't just the first level, like the project leader, no. Section manager, no. He didn't. I had more than he did. And even the department manager, I had more than he did as well.
What's the logic behind that? I mean, like, then what makes people want to be managers then?
Skill, experience, but basically it was my output. Nothing to do with, and this is what drives me nuts, is it like, oh, gender inequality. No. It's got all to do with who you are as a company resource. Can you bring money back to the family group? That's it.
Yeah.
And if you can bring in $1 million, well, okay, you get a fair share of $1 million, man.
Yeah.
And everyone in your group, all of your cohort, will also get nice big pay rises as well. And so there's nothing to do with, you're getting paid less because, no, I perform more. When I actually got into an argument with one guy about this. that was back in the office, because he actually found out that I received like a 12% increase at, I think, the third year, and he only got like 1.5%. Right?
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, I deserve the same," and so forth. I said, "Well, okay, you do what I do for 2 weeks, right, and see what you do." He couldn't handle 3 days. He had to go home at 4:57, and he couldn't go to the customer to go and hold their hands when we were installing applications and when they've got problems. No, he couldn't do that. Right, so you want the same pay, but for doing absolutely squat, right? So if anyone comes into me and says, "Oh, pay equality and all this," you have no idea what you're talking about. Look, I'm getting frustrated. I don't know why, because I was actually arguing with that guy in the office exactly that way.
I see you're remembering the emotion of that situation. Right?
I was just saying, yes, I was. So
I like it.
Because it really is frustrating if you really put effort in, blood and guts, like seriously, almost to a point where you can have medical issues, right? But you put in, and then someone who just lays about, does nothing, wants to get what you. No, it's not fair. It's just not right.
Okay. But this was
a bit of rambling off me. Sorry.
No, that's good. That's good. But the thing is, I just wanted to make a point about the privacy of I guess being in a private corporation versus being in academia or government, where people know all your salaries, because it's kind of transparency, you know what I mean? And the thing is, there's a reason for not revealing your salaries, right? And from my understanding is that the bad thing to do in a private company is go up to a person and say, how much do you earn each year? That kind of thing. You never ask that question. No, in corporate, right? Whereas you don't have to ask that question in academia or in public service, because it's, gazetted, it's common knowledge. You Google it, you can see it, etc. That kind of thing,
Can I just stop you there?
Sure, yeah.
I still get people saying that there's a wage gap between males and females in education, and I said, what planet are you on? Because the pay is actually specified per position. It has nothing to do with gender. Everybody knows what they're on in an educational thing. Right? How anyone in their right mind can say there is a discrepancy? I have no idea. I don't know where these people come from.
The people would say, the people that argue the discrepancy is probably in the case of education. Right? If everybody knows what everybody's getting in terms of salaries, but there's more men than women, right? It's because maybe the interviewing process, that maybe there's a bias where people select or choose. Sometimes the gender equality is not in the workplace. Oh, you mean like women get less work or more work in the workplace because of the job?
In the IT field, Andrew, completely incorrect. Everybody's on the same wicket. There's nothing to do with gender. This is the task. This is what you have to produce. Everybody's in. And it doesn't matter who you are, what you look like, or anything. You have to produce. And if as a team you actually do produce, then there's income into the family, so the whole team will get some kind of benefit out of it. And it's distributed on how much effort and how much you actually put in to get to that goal. But it's not workload. It's got nothing to do with it, apart from if it's manual, picking things up and stuff. That's a different matter.
You mean like being a bricky's labourer? Like I'd like to see.
I'll give you examples in the office for my staff. I had strict regulations saying that if anything's over 20 kilo, and it was one of the ladies, which were my staff, I said, you will not pick that up. You let me know, and I'll get someone from the warehouse to come over and pick it up for you.
Oh, you had that? You had that as a right?
I had an agreement with them, even a verbal as well. So all of my female staff knew I do not want you to pick up big, huge, luggy monitors. So no, someone
Because, because in past places where I worked, the rule of thumb was normally, hey, you're a tall guy, help in moving furniture.
Yeah,
That kind of thing.
not allowed. And just as it was a company rule as well.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to pick up things which are, such a dimension. I can't quite remember.
Okay. Yeah.
And generally speaking, I think it was 35 kilos or something like that. You're not allowed to pick up, and that was a company-wide directive for anyone. But
Okay.
in my division, any of the female staff, I said you will not pick up anything from 20. So I cut mine below what the company standard was.
Interesting. Yeah.
And if I had one of my staff was pregnant, I said you will not pick anything up. No. So
Even if they wanted to do it, even if pregnant women.
Particulars, I can open up my door and all this. Personally, I don't want you doing it. Please don't do it. Right, end of story.
Yeah, because once again, there's a liability issue, a legal liability issue, because, it's incorporated.
To me, it was a personal thing as well. I don't want things that I wouldn't do.
Which is
if my wife was there pregnant, I would not have to pick stuff up. So why would I expect the same for my employees? No.
And the magic word is, for people who have actually been, watching some of the YouTube videos from past week, what Ilya is talking about is chivalry, which is from the days of the Middle Ages. The knights of old had this kind of code of conduct to be nice to ladies, right? Because, of the fact that before you had this kind of chivalry, you kind of take advantage of women, etc., because they were boys, etc. And it was kind of if you were a knight of the realm, it means you were above that sort of thing. You had to kind of take care of females, etc. And I think, and when people talk now about opening doors for women, it kind of, often the word chivalry pops up. Now, what you described is, to me, chivalry, thinking about...
Well, I'll give you an example. I'll probably get kicked out of RMIT, but I'll give you an example.
Enjoy the club. So...
And this is not... It's actually happened. I'm on a trip in Sydney, business trip. I go to the main house in Binton. I can't remember what it's called. It wasn't Bridge Street. So I'm going into the building, and I open the door and let the lady behind me. I sort of open at the side, let the lady behind me walk through. Right?
Yeah.
What do you think happened?
She got angry at you.
She blasted. She went right in the face. She went red, saying, "Don't you think I can do that for myself?" Oh no! And I thought, what have I done wrong, right? So anyway, so what I thought was, "Fuck you!" And I'd sort of walked around the side of the door, pulled the door shut, and waved at her through the glass. I couldn't believe it. She ripped me to shreds, saying, "Don't you think I can do this for myself?" I'm just trying to do something else, right? I would do that for my wife. I would do that for my daughters, for Christ's sake.
No, but I sometimes hold open doors for men, you know what I mean? It's not just women, I mean, because it's more like, if you go through the door first, maybe it's kind of nice that you don't slam the door behind you, so the person has to kind of back into it, or that kind of, because maybe you'd like it if somebody else did that for you.
I don't. But ever since I've never opened doors and no.
So they've retrained you. Right?
Well, now if there's a gap, I'm in first. I will elbow you out the way. I don't care who you are.
But I'm just putting up this article from ZDNet, migrating technology and security and privacy threats ahead. Brain computer interface technology is developing fast, but just because we can read data from others, why should we? And this is from 2019, I think. They had special feature of building the bionic brain. We'll be able to have add-ons to our brains. We'll be cyborgs, one day, I guess, and often I kind of speculate in these kind of wild short experiments, if humans had evolved, right, so that, say, we had the natural ability to read each other's minds, like telepathy, for example, right? I think that probably we, as a species, wouldn't have had the need for language. So probably language wouldn't have evolved in the sophisticated way that it did, right? And probably the kind of language that would have evolved would have been just, for emotional purposes. So they'd be making like more ways of swearing, etc., that kind of thing, right? So all be like Vikings, etc., that kind of thing, right? And the thing is, but one thing, if you're talking about telepathy, and this is kind of, I don't know, Ilya, I've never asked you this question, right? Do you believe in, the possibility that people have telepathy, telekinesis, these kind of supernatural?
I don't know. Never really thought of it.
You never thought about that, etc. Because for a while, governments were sponsoring research programs, right? Trying to determine, whether people had these abilities, and if they did have these abilities, could they be kind of weaponized or militarized in some way? I do know that Iron Curtain countries did that. They had programs like Soviet Union was trying to find, people with these kind of paranormal abilities. For example, the US, certainly, CIA. And I think even academics. There was a famous research institute, I think, in America. It's the University of Pennsylvania, the Ryan Institute. It's an academic called Ryan, right? And he spent most of his life trying to study, parapsychology. But I think he was like totally discredited, etc. And it's more like, well, and it's interesting when you look at the history of that kind of, research into parapsychology, because first it was part of the realm of magic, what I mean? So it was lumped in with fortune telling and stuff like that, And then people kind of tried to look at it academically, but most people who did this at an academic level eventually were kind of discredited or just kind of embarrassed out of doing it, because for one thing, right, it's very difficult to do a study, to determine whether somebody has the ability of telepathy and whatever in an empirical way, doing experiments, finding evidence. Like you yourself as a PhD student, you get the whole evidence kind of thing. How do you find the proof to justify something, right? And if you're talking about mind reading or moving objects with your mind, etc., it's kind of difficult to determine that in a kind of valid way. So
I do have one question. And I think I've talked to you about this before, is you could be in the middle of Burke Street and there could be hundreds of people around.
Yeah.
You actually sense when someone's actually looking at you.
Okay, yeah.
And the interesting thing I found was I could be standing looking down the crowd, and I sense that the person who is basically like 40, 50 degrees, look they're aligned, off center, not directly at you. And you've got sunglasses, you can still tell that they're looking at you.
Okay, but you see, that's interesting, right? You see, the reason why it's good that you brought this up, right, because it's related to privacy. The fact that now we have to wear masks. So how many people love wearing masks? Earlier, do you like wearing a mask?
No, thank you.
because just today, there was an ad for some company that's selling masks, and they said, we also sell masks for people with beards, big beards. Because it kind of makes me think that if you have a large beard, like a Santa Claus, Karl Marx one, like yours earlier, it must be damn uncomfortable putting a mask on that kind of, clump.
Yeah, it is. And especially sunglasses on as well. They fog up.
Yeah. So the thing is, like, when you wear the mask on, right, and you're kind of walking around, it's a strange world that we're in now, right, because we're actually more private, I think, than ever before, right? Because we're hiding, most of our face. So in other words, right, the only thing that's supposed to be visible is our eyes, right? So, I don't know, the eyes are the windows to the soul, for example, right? And as soon as this mask culture came in, the experts popped up on radio talking about here's new ways of communicating using your eyes. You know, how you can say things with just your eyes, for example, right? And I don't know. I mean, like, have you, you know, experienced this kind of new phenomenon of eye communication? You know,
Well, I extremely important in meetings, especially with staff and so forth. Right? If you're meeting customer, and you're not high level, you don't give them their eye. You're not going to get the business. Like if I was talking to you and you were looking down at the floor all the time, I'm talking to your forehead. I'm not going to do that. No. So eyes are extremely. Body language is very, very important within business. Extremely important. I'd recommend people to go out and actually do body language courses.
Did you do that? Did you do that earlier? Did you do a body language course?
No, but I know I did send my staff out.
There's a lot of videos on TikTok where they try to muffle word in mask and say real sentence afterwards. Like, give me the do you have the honey? I can imagine me going to a bank or something, right, and they can't actually understand my muffled voice, and they think I have a gun in my pocket.
Yeah.
Because remember, I don't know, Ilya, have you seen that movie? I think it's Woody Allen's first movie, Take the Money and Run.
Oh,
have you seen Take the Money and Run? It's the very first movie that he did, right? And it's just like a bunch of, you know, like standalone gags, right? But he goes into a bank, right? And I don't think he actually says, I have a gun in my pocket, but he actually gives them a note, right? And then the bank teller can't read it because his writing is so bad. And it says you have a gum in your pocket. What's a gum? You know? It's really funny saying. I mean, for Woody Allen, it's a really kind of thing. But no, yeah, Andrew, because you make an interesting point about. See, I think the problem with masks, right, is okay, they're kind of uncomfortable because we suddenly have to wear them. But I think there's also opportunity to be innovative, to design kind of digital hybrid mask. If you can have like an intelligent mask, if I could use that word, you know, so that maybe, you know, when people talk through a mask, maybe because their accent's strong anyhow, right, the mask can kind of muffle their sound more and make them sound less intelligible. But what if you could have some kind of speech synthesis software in the mask so it actually changes your voice or alters it, you know? So it could actually either amplify your voice or make you sound totally different. You know, like those movies where they have people, you know, getting a message from a kidnapper, and the kidnapper's talking on the phone, and he's talking through something that distorts their voice, for example. And we talk with our eyes. So that way we have what they call paralanguage, or we can actually, communicate in different ways. Because earlier said body language, for example, right? And that maybe if you want to be successful in business, you have to kind of do a course in body language, for example. But I guess in kind of mass culture, for example, maybe what? Oh, like lip reading, yes. Oh, yeah, 2001, yes. Okay, somebody saw 2001. Ilya, do you remember?
Yep.
2001: Space Odyssey. Remember?
Yep.
In the middle, where the two astronauts say, "Let's go into the pod and turn off the sound so that, you know, Hal won't hear us." And then Hal notices, you know, you took all the precautions, but I read your lips, etc.
Yeah, exactly.
That kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
And that's the thing as well, you know. I mean, the fact about people wearing masks now is it is actually kind of putting a damper on people who do read lips because they're hearing impaired. You know? But the thing about
I have one thing before, because we're running out of time.
yeah.
The privacy issue.
Yeah.
We're talking about surveillance cameras and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
They have the same deal within organisations, right?
Yeah.
And I can tell you now that every one of my employees had to sign a privacy agreement, sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
And And the thing is, a lot of like the students that I see over the years, they say, oh, it's a privacy issue. But you sign that form, it doesn't mean squat. In business, you are still being surveyed, or you got surveillance on you 24/7 in an organisation. In terms of all of your emails are scanned, all of your telephone calls, when did you call, who did you call, how long were you on the call, all that sort of stuff. It's all within the corporate. And I guarantee you RMIT does the same thing with staff, right? Any organization does. So then we start talking about privacy, right? So we're talking about privacy in the public, but what about the privacy stuff within organisations? Right? A lot of people miss that.
The thing is, maybe the term privacy in organisations, the privacy at RMIT would be, okay, yes, we're aware that we're probably under constant surveillance, but it'd be more like an invasion of privacy would be if somebody then uses that information from the surveillance and you find out about it. So somebody says, well, we know that you ordered this thing from Amazon, for example, at such and such a time, for example. And you find out that somebody actually has been kind of gossiping about what you did. And then that would be kind of more icky rather than kind of you knowing, hey, they know everything, except it's more like how they misuse something. And I think obviously with this kind of constant surveillance, it would be, there's some vast database, right, of what you've been doing and what you've been accessing and what you've been watching, right? And that will only be tapped into as soon as you do something wrong. Yeah. So if you're connected to doing something wrong, then that would be, called upon as evidence, for example. So, for example, that one guy, and I think he was a researcher at INT, he may have actually started, Gordon Moore, I think his name was, right? He co-founded Intel, right? But he invented a concept called, and I'll type it in, life logging, right? So life logging, and I think you should probably Google that, you'll find heaps of articles about it, right? So what he wanted, and he worked on a few kind of proto versions of a system for life logging, that you would have, and this was like before mobile phones took off, like they did, have a camera dangling around your neck, and the camera had the capacity to actually take constant pictures, video, etc., as well as record your conversations, and that would be on all the time. So every time you wake up in the morning, you stick this thing around and walk around. So it would actually keep a record of the whole life. And his rationale for this is most people live their lives, right? And they don't know what they do, for most of their lives, for example. Right? And this way you could always access your life log, what you did, at a particular day, at a particular hour, at a particular minute, a particular second. And you could know exactly what you did, which is probably nothing, At 2 p.m. on Saturday, John did nothing. At 2:05, he may have actually gone to the toilet or something like that. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing, right? And the thing is like a big deal, but it's more like at some point in your life, maybe it would be nice to know what you did at certain times in your life. Yeah, and most people would do this, not through life logging, but taking photographs, for example. So people take family photos or just photos, for example. And then a photo album. More people have albums, photos online, etc. Right? And the fact is that now that you have cameras everywhere, there's like too many photos. There's photos of photos and photos, etc. That kind of thing. Right? And it's more like people take photos of everything. They take photos of what they eat, where they go, interesting things, for example. Does anybody actually bother to look at the millions of photos that they take?
Good point.
Good point. It's almost like it doesn't really matter. You may have taken a gazillion photos, right, Samsung, Apple camera phone, etc., that kind of thing. And then you kind of never bother looking at them, but it doesn't really matter because I think what these things do is give us new rituals. I think, so it's like a lot of times when the restaurants and cafes are open, I would kind of watch other people eating, and the first thing that most people do is they take a photo of whatever their friends brought to them, right? And then they kind of share photos with each other, not of that thing that they took a photo of, but what they ate last. So it's almost like a secular form of grace. If you're a Christian, Catholic, or that kind of thing, people might say a prayer, in thanks of what you eat. But now you take a photo of what you eat as proof that you've eaten something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And once again, somebody might say, oh, well, we'll hack in and steal everybody's pictures of their breakfasts. For what reason? I mean, I don't know, maybe there's some way you could make money out of it. I mean,
Costco hot dog.
well, I wanted to actually make a point about one last point about privacy was, I think it was one of the things that the Victorian Privacy Commissioner was arguing up about a few years ago, recently, right, was sexting, because apparently people in high school were actually, taking photos of body parts and kind of texting them to each other, right? And it was given this term, sexting, etc., that kind of thing, right? And I think at the time, government had to change some laws, right? Because, the very act of doing this was almost like, producing pornography and sharing it, which was a crime. And they had to kind of change the law subtly, meaning that it's a useful indiscretion, for example. Well, you have people in America making pronouncements like sexting is the new norm. It's a new form of communication. And it's that's a generalization as well. Just because a few people take photos of their body parts and text them to each other doesn't mean that it's kind of a nice trend, for example. It's kind of, it means that you can do this now because you have the technology, and then pretty soon people might get bored of it and go on to something else. But, and people couldn't do this in the past because, can you imagine, when kind of, the cameras were first invented, the Lumiere brothers, what I'm going to use this huge thing for with the, we'll do sexting, etc. That kind of thing. We'll have to develop it, with the big sense and kind of just run to whoever they give me a photo to, and because why are you giving me a picture of your body, etc.
Yeah, no.
Would make sense, that kind of thing, But yeah, and I think, and the other thing that was connected with sexting was Snapchat, because Snapchat had come in, right, when sexting was in vogue, right? And Snapchat originally was more like you would share images with people, right? And the images had a limited lifespan, so more like they disappear after like 1 year or whatever short time period it was, right? And the coolness on it was, things didn't have a sense of permanency, so it was transient, And it really wasn't meant for sexting, right? It was meant for just sharing odd things, and you could share it with your friends, etc., and that kind of thing, and they'd see it, cool, that's it, and then it disappeared, for example. And people kind of figured out a way of capturing that, and, as they say, nothing on the internet, ever disappears. There's always a trace of it somewhere. So, but I think the Snapchat people originally wanted to actually have something that kind of, I don't know, kept people's privacy intact by having a limited lifespan on what was being actually exchanged, etc. But people will kind of always figure out ways of recording things, So as long as people can record things, right, then, it can be held in a private state, but there's always some way that, that can be accessed, either intentionally or accidentally.
Yeah.
Well, but privacy, yeah, okay. So okay, what do you think, Elliot? Do you think privacy, what's the question is, or is it, does privacy still matter in the digital age? Do you believe, yes or no? Does privacy still matter?
Privacy, yes. Personally, I don't want everybody knowing what I'm doing. But on the other hand, if I'm walking down the street and so forth, I'm not going to be doing anything stupid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The way I specify it is, I like privacy within privacy, but privacy within public, who cares?
So I mean, eventually we're going to be back to stage 3 or stage 2, etc. I think once we start going back to cafes, we'll have to maybe register our address or our phone number, for contact tracing. So do you have any issues with that? The whole kind of contact tracing?
No not at all. But I'm not sure about taking the vaccine.
Well,
Not
you're
sure.
not taking.
Yeah, not sure about that one.
Oh, okay. So you mean like that plan for having compulsory vaccines? Yeah.
Yeah, we've been like just thinking about. I don't think there's been enough trial on that thing. I don't know why they're just sort of jumping the gun and starting to inject people. I don't know. I would have been a few years of trials to see
But if
what.
it's a good nurse or a medico, you'll get it before you even know it. It's more like, you just want to let you go, you walk past them, that's why you say, I don't want this, and all of a sudden I've already given it to you. That was fast, thank you.
Yeah, but I'm lucky because I don't actually go to the doctors very often.
That's a bad thing to admit, you see, I mean, like,
I think the last time I went to the doctor was about 10 years ago. He keeps pestering me with, you must do your blood test. You must do your blood test. So I keep getting all these letters. I don't even go to sleep. Yeah.
You do know that the GP is your confessor. It's like it's your confession. You can tell them anything.
Yeah, personally, I stay right away from them. It's like same thing.
That sounds like a phobia. There, a phobia of GPs.
Almost, I think, yeah. And now we're in the family as well.
Sometimes they actually warm up their fingers, so.
Yeah. But time, John.
I know. It's 1:26. Okay, so any last questions from the audience? Except
so. Turn off the recording as well. And can I just say, well done, Andrew. Well done. Very good questions.
Thank you, Andrew.
Hopefully, sort of, I gave you some info anyway. You don't have to take it. You can go and research it. But
what are you taking? Yeah. Okay.
He's a smart guy.
Oh, actually, one last thing I want to show people is, and I know I've been just I lost. There. Is I've been overloading people with things to read. This thing just popped. Just bring it up. That's it. Yeah. I might pop in. I might pop this into the Digital Ethics Club, but it's a short story that I found by David Brin called The Giving Plague, and it kind of fits into the current thing. It's more about a different kind of pandemic. So there's a virus that comes from outer space somewhere and affects people on Earth, right? And instead of actually doing nasty things, it's actually a positive virus. It makes people pro-social. It makes them give. Makes them generous, etc. So I don't know, mate. Plonk that onto if you have nothing else to do in life. But I'm sure you all have other things to do that we do. But I keep on finding all these interesting things I'd like to actually share, but I know people have so many things to do in life, etc. But this one I had to kind of point out, the giving plate, right? Because often when people talk about viruses, it's always, oh no, we're scared of it. And in this case, it's not. You're left behind. So weird. And actually, we're actually producing them. So, anyhow, whenever you do have the time, right, dip into the stuff that I've put into the Digital Ethics Club, because that's what I put some kind of fun stuff. And that includes you two, Ilya, so you can feel free to...
Yeah, if I get time.
If you get time to comment on anything. And thanks to everyone that has actually taken the time to actually comment and share. And it's kind of interesting because I get students kind of commenting in the Digital Ethics Club at weird times, right? I was there putting something up. It must have been like 12:15, on Saturday morning,
Yeah.
12:15 a.m., right? And somebody had kind of watched the TED Talk from Ethan Falk and made a long comment, which is very impressive, right? But also kind of a bit sad, sleep is important. But it should be important for me too, So I shouldn't be actually posting things at midnight on a weekend. Yeah. Anyhow, thank you, Ilya, for taking part once again. Another Zurian Wednesday online discussion for this course, yeah? And thank you, our students, for actually taking part. Once again, this will end up in the week-based learning materials bin, nicely edited by Ilya, as he normally does. And if you have any questions, like I said, please feel free to post them into the Digital Ethics forum or send me an email, etc. And we'll handle it. Thanks, Barrett, and have a good rest of the week. Thank you, Ilya. And I will turn off recording now.